Hello, I'm Brent Farris from the Bearded Man Studios, and I'm back from the last video to tell you where to start. So in the last video we discussed all the types of things that we needed in a blackjack game. Not all the types, I should say the main types, the basics of what we need to do or need to have for this blackjack game. So in this one I'm going to tell you where I would start. So whenever I get this basic idea, and all of this probably is populated in my head in a split second now that I've been doing this for years, but for you, you might have to write it out like this. So now that I have all these basic attributes for the game and what I want to have happen, it might not be a game, it might be a software application. Now that I have identified the properties of what I'm trying to create, I can now work against it. And one thing that I would do is look around and say, alright, so I have a card, a deck, and a player, class, and rules. Usually I want to start in a class. Do I want to start in a player? No, because it has cards in it, and cards is an array of card, the card class. And okay, so what about deck? Well, the deck also has an array of card class in it. Well, then what about card? Does card have something that is reliant on other things? No, it just has 3 data types. No AVG, not in the middle of my video. Card has 3 data types. It has an int, an enum, and another enum. And that's all it has. These are basic data types that aren't reliant on anything. So I could start with my card class. So I create my card class, create its number, its shape, its color, its constructor to create those 3. And then I'm kind of ready to go. Now, can I do anything with that class? Can I echo out stuff? Sure, I can say, echo out constructor. You have created a card with numbers, whatever, shape, whatever, color, whatever, and I can echo out the properties to make sure it's actually working. Once I have identified that the card is working, I'm going to say that it immediately is associated with a deck. And so I'm going to create a deck. I'm going to make sure the deck creates an array of 52 cards now in the constructor. And can I echo out things? Yes, that's what a prototype is all about, is just seeing visually, or not, maybe it might not be with pictures or anything, could be with text or whatever, just visually seeing that your program is actually working. So when I go to the deck, inside of the constructor, I may make a for loop to go through and create every single card. Of course, I'm going to have to think a little bit about the algorithm. Well, there's 52 cards, and there's four numbers of each, and there's a different type on each card, blah, 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 and I can create my for loop in my constructor for each card in this cards array. Once I've completed creating it, I can make sure that my algorithm worked correctly and echo it to the screen. Echo out every single card and go through the list to make sure that, card, or you can say integer or whatever. Card I is number, blah, shape, blah, color, blah. And then you keep echoing out card after card, and you see that all cards are correct. You now know that you have created a deck of cards inside of your program, and you have something to start off with. So right now I could start and say, alright, cool, so let's pick a random card from the deck. So we create a function inside of deck called random card. It's called random card, and it returns a card. So I call this function random card, and it goes through my list with all the logic and grabs a random card out of the cards array and returns cards. So now I have randomly selected a card, and I can do this all in the console window right from the start. I can say my deck dot, we'll call it get random card, deck dot get random card. And then I now have a card variable that I can say, what kind of card is it? It has a number, shape, and a color. And when I get a random card, I can have another function inside saying, let's call it a used cards. I now know that I need an array. Let's call it array of card. Or it could be an array of integers. It may be easier to think for some people. Let's just call it an array of ints, which is cards, and this may be a dynamic array, so it scales with whatever, but if you don't know what that is, just forget about it. Just know that we have to keep track of what cards are used, right? We have now created the deck, and now in my mind, and my explanation, I have just proved to you that as I prototype out these little things like a card and a deck, I now start to think even further down the road, and I say, well, I want my deck to get a random card. Well, wait a second. If I get a random card from the deck, I need to make sure that I don't pull it again. So I need to keep track of it in a used cards array. Now, whenever I go to get random card, I'm going to make sure that it's not inside of used cards before I return it. And there you go. I have just expanded the deck class to have more logic, to be smarter, and to start getting fine-tuned towards my game. And I guess it goes without saying, I don't need to continue explaining forever, but I will do I level. Now that I've created a deck of cards, I want to create a player. So my player needs to have options, options. And so I need a loop. And I need this loop so I can maybe update this loop in my main loop and say, if it's my turn, I just realized that, hey, if it's my turn, is my turn, is now a bool. I now need to keep track of whether or not it's my turn. Now, I have options in my while loop, blah, blah, blah. I choose between two things. I may create a loop here that chooses two things. When I, buy in, I'm going to spend some money, etc., etc. But now you can see, I don't need to go on forever, but now you can see kind of my thought process when I'm coming out and trying to write out software or a game or anything. Games are software. So now I have a formula for coming up with any idea that I want. I can say, I want a card game. Well, it has card, it has a deck, it has a player, it has rules, and in the deck it has a certain number of cards, and blah blah blah. And then I can say, alright, I want to have a dice game. Well, a dice game has a pair of dice. Each dice has it has 6 sides. Each side has a different number, and I start identifying all of the properties about each object, and that is how you can get a good start. I like to think of programming as a learning experience every time I do it, because every time I create some new program, I get to say, what are the properties of something, what makes it up, what are the physics behind it, what is everything about this object. I get to learn about dice and how they roll and what my chances and how many sides they have, and etc., etc. And it could be about anything. It doesn't just have to be card games. If it's a first-person shooter, if I want to go really deep in and say, all right, player needs various guns. Each gun needs to have some kind of scope. Each gun also needs to have different kinds of barrel attachments, and they need then each gun needs to have a velocity that the bullet comes out, a rate of fire. It has to have all the stuff. So when you start off and you look at something, the first thing you need to do when you're programming is analyze the properties of that object. You need to look and just figure out everything about that object that you can. Once you have put down everything about that object in an identifiable, workable thing, you have classes, you have individual parts, enums, ints. You can actually put data types against them, and it's not so scary anymore. Now you have a bunch of class structures, and now you're ready for prototyping. You look through the classes and you figure out which one is the best to start prototyping with. Well, I can't do player because it needs cards. I can't do deck because it needs cards. Well, that points, hey, does cards need anything? No. Let's do cards. And you prototype out your cards. Make sure they construct right. Make sure that they have a suit, shape, color, blah blah blah. Suit, shape, color, number, etc. And so there you go. That is how you start with an idea. And a lot of people, it's not just my friend that's asked me this, but a lot of people have asked me, how do I get started? I have no idea where to start. I have no idea what I need to do. I have no idea where to go. Where do I jump in? And really, you jump in by analyzing the object at hand. And that's my advice for how to come up with starting to plan out things, coming up with things, and start programming. And once you start doing these steps, it's just It's just for me it was mind blowing when I started doing steps like this compared to just like jumping in and saying, well, he needs to shoot, let's make this thing shoot, and then all of a sudden I have to go backwards 1,000 times because I made the thing shoot, but now the player has no type, and etc. etc. So I hope this helps, and I hope this helps you get started on where to start with programming. Now that you have the basics, where you can start creating, because programming and software engineering is such a beautiful thing, because literally anything you can imagine, anything that exists in this world, you can recreate in the virtual sense, or even write against a physical object like a robot. So you really have the power to invent absolutely anything that you can imagine. All you need to do is break it down and identify the properties, and a lot of people should know that it is the scientific method. So I hope this helps. Until next time.